A very good morning to you all, wherever you're joining us from this lovely Friday morning. I am Chamberlain Oso, reporting live from Abuja.
Go ahead, it's the ladies first, so let's be kind.
Oh, okay. I appreciate your kindness this morning, Ayo.
Chamberlain, just remain in Abuja, okay?
You know
this is Lagos. Remain in Abuja, okay? This is Lagos. So please go ahead.
All right. No
Chamberlain, it's just a product of a very relaxing Friday. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Interesting, you didn't count down to Christmas today. Well, just a quick one. It's the 16th day in the month of December 2022. And that's how many days to Christmas? You do the math.
9 days to Christmas.
Oh, Christ. Good morning and welcome to the show.
With all this countdown, you better have something for the viewers when you people keep counting down, building everybody's hopes up for Christmas. Well, it's understandable. I mean, it's one of the loveliest months of the year, I might add. But you know what? Yes, we're also speaking about elections in a similar breath because that is going to happen a couple of days. We're counting down as well to elections. We did talk about collection of permanent voter cards yesterday. We can't talk about that enough actually, because you have to ensure you go out there and pick it up and make sure you perform that all important civic responsibility, because a lot depends on you, what you do. Now it's about you making those decisions for the next 4 years of your life. Think about it. If you're one of those selling your PVCs, is it really worth it? Next 4 years of your life. So it's up to you to go ahead and think about it. So we'll translate this as much as possible in a really good language so that people can understand it. We'll try on that one. But speaking about guaranteeing elections, one of the reasons why lots of people, those who we've spoken to anyways, said they actually got very interested in coming out to register and pick up the PVCs with intention to vote on that day, in election day, both in February and in March, is because of the introduction of the biometric voter accreditation system. They saw the way it was applied in some elections and they thought, okay, if this is the closest to credible elections that we can get, why not give it a shot? Because one thing that dissuaded a lot of them was when they kept on saying, our vote doesn't matter, it won't count, they will do what they have to do. But with this now, there's a lot more optimism. So having gone through all of the hassles to get yourself registered, just complete it all and picking up your card. And ensuring that election security is guaranteed. Several of those agencies have been speaking up concerning what and how they intend to ensure that you are secured when you go out to carry out that responsibility, to the extent that your vote counts. No one who has any untoward or ill or bad initiative to ensure this cut of the process succeeds. So the IGP has been speaking a lot these days about some of the things. And of course, we expect them to say much more, tell us how they want to or what they're doing, not just telling us. We need to see that as well, because remember, guys, you always talk about that, trust quotient for the people and the police, how they need to volunteer information to them as much as possible to ensure that that partnership, when they say the police is your friend, it's not just by word of mouth, but indeed as well. So a lot depends on the Inspector General of Police himself and his team, security agencies. I think they have this inter-agency or security unit where they all meet and decide and discuss how they need to guarantee security. So it'll be interesting to see that they put their money where their mouth is. After all, the #1 citizen in this country has given them several marching orders. How he hasn't hidden his intentions of how he wants to ensure he lives a credible election. And security is a huge component of all of that, I might add.
It's interesting, right? I mean, by the way, Chamberlain, it's interesting that you put those two issues together, collection of cards and election security. Those are two very critical things that will happen during the election, before the election, our preparations and our build-up to the general elections. And there is no doubt about the fact that the security issues that you have raised, they are as germane as they come. I mean, for God's sake, if people are not secure enough to collect their voter cards, how can they feel safe enough to even go and vote on election day? I tried to get my card yesterday, and I was told, for instance, that the people that are being attended to now are transfers, replacements, and all those things. Those are the people that were being attended to. So I spoke with an INEC official, an official with the presidency ID card around his neck, and they said I should come back after Christmas. Well, interestingly, Christmas is a Sunday. The following day is a Monday. Maybe it will be okay. That's Boxing Day, and so that means in the course of the week after Christmas, I'll have to go try to get that. So security, we can't talk about it enough. And I know, as you said, Chamberlain, that interagency collaboration on security, for the elections, for election security, it's quite a number of agencies of government put together. I mean, right now we are having challenges with security on our hands in our nation. How do we ensure that the people who are unable to take care of protection of the people and all those things now will be able to protect and defend democracy when the time comes? Most certainly the IGP and his team, they are doing their own level best to ensure that the needful is done, a meeting with police commissioners over election security and all those things. Most certainly very, very important thing. Talking about the engagement of tactical meetings and conferences with stakeholders to build solid standard operating procedures and strategic communication, and all those things are very, very good at Dogo Turenchi, as Malkwe would put it. But at the end of the day, it drills down to the people. How safe do people feel now? How confident do they feel to go get their PVCs now? We're happy with what we heard on Monday about the large turnout of voters. It was a large turnout at the local government, my INEC local government, where I went to collect my card yesterday. It was a large turnout. It was huge. Rowdy, but huge. People wanted to get their PVCs, and the number of them kept. The moment I was told, I just turned back. Some people will not be as understanding. They will feel like, hey, maybe they want to disenfranchise me already. But hey, so communication. I think that's the most important thing, be it election security or voter card collection.
Large turnout is reassuring. It's a morale booster, a confidence booster about how people feel about the electoral process. And as we say, the morning shows the day. So it tells us what to expect, I hope, during the elections proper. And in relation to that and to your experience, this is information from the grapevine. Somehow I chanced upon the resident electoral commissioner of INEC, Lagos State, yesterday, and he says that those who registered in this round of continuous voter registration will have their PVCs sometime from Sunday or Monday. Sunday, that's 2 days from now, or Monday, because those PVCs have arrived, and currently they're deploying them to the ideal local government offices. So from Sunday, distribution will now be a realistic process to commence. So just go out there, be encouraged to go collect your PVCs, and just tying it to what Chamberlain said earlier on, that your choice, your decision to collect your PVC is very, very critical at this point in time, because it's going to determine your democratic experience for the next 4 years. Imagine if you had an infant now, that infant will be, 4 in the next 4 years. So your choice determines, what you can afford in terms of feeding, in terms of clothing, in terms of education for that infant. And you know what our democratic experience is always like. The government is sure or likely to be the next government for another 4 years. So it's very, very critical. And then again, that meeting with the IGP and commissioners of police is just as important and related to the collection of PVCs, you know. But I hope sincerely that they're having honest conversations at that table. I like to talk about the elephant in the room. You know, now we're having experiences such as attacks on INEC offices, and you know, this is also to commend the Imo State Police Command, you know, for the gallantry they demonstrated in repelling that attack on the INEC office in Owerri in Imo State just some days ago. But I hope that that capacity also extends to how they're able to also respond to emergency situations during the collection of PVCs and the election proper. I hope that honest conversations also go to the heart of the matter in terms of welfare of the police officers, in terms of equipment. These are the critical issues that should be discussed, you know, because it goes to neutrality of the police officers during this election, whether or not, you know, they're going to be playing to the gallery, to, you know, the whims and caprices of politicians. So when their welfare has been taken care of, at least by half or more than half, you know, they're sure to demonstrate professionalism during the election. We could go on and on about these issues, but then again, we have more to talk about in just a moment.
Chamberlain, by the way, just to let you know, when you talked about people buying their votes, selling their voter cards, I did a quick math. Just in case you sold your card for 5,000 naira, over the next 4 years, it amounts to less than 3 naira 50 kobo. Okay, just for your information.
Thank you for that mathematics.
Very profitable for those politicians, isn't it?
Oh, of course. And the loss is for the people.
Well, you know, I won't be quick to commend the police yet because I want to wait until after the elections to decide how these things go, because several people they always keep saying it. Security agencies have got to be non-partisan. They don't have to descend into the arena. Theirs is just to ensure that that is done. Because arresting electoral offenders is an issue. The buck passing between INEC and security agencies in terms of who is to point out or arrest those people it keeps going back and forth on that one. Intelligence to ensure that those attacks on INEC offices don't happen in the first instance is huge. So once they improve their intelligence gathering mechanism or system, strengthening whichever way they want, then that will be, you know, beauty to behold if that were to be the case. So there are several components of all of these things. We don't want to see accusations or allegations against security agencies panning or pandering towards a certain politician, helping them rig or win elections. And INEC officials as well. You have a huge role to play here. Many have say, look, keep your eye on INEC as well, because they know the in and out of some of these things. You don't want to be seen or accused of being a tool in the hands of any of those politicians. So we all have to come together to play this role. Yes, you can watch the media, watch INEC, watch security. Let's all watch ourselves, because at the end of the day, it's about ensuring that we have a lovely country. And speaking of which, how many of you guys have gotten those, what was your experience getting your new Naira notes? Did you branch the ATM this morning? Did you go to the banks? I think we'll take a look at some of those in just a moment here. Makwe, don't worry, should be on soon. So join us again, everyone. All right, welcome back. We were asking if you got the new Naira notes. Did you by any way branch?
The bank?
ATM? Bank? Any chance? Did you get time?
You know how
I didn't.
How CBN has been teasing us and saying that the reason why they put the limit at 20,000 naira is because almost all of us combined do not have how much in our accounts. So they have to be...
I see. We'll talk about that as we progress on the program today. You know, so just keep it locked here.
Anyways, but, you know, away from the jokes. No, I didn't go to the bank. I haven't gone there yet. But I'm hoping that one of the ATMs will dispense, perhaps if we need some cash today.
Because there's this talk about some... Okay, well, maybe when the program the discussion starts, because some folks said, look, what about farmers who are in some areas that some say is in a state or in a state capital, or even in a state, you don't have as many banks as you have in several commercial cities.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And they have huge population, for instance. So with that timeline, Can they meet up with that? And so many rich people are going to dump those ordinary notes with the farmers who will have a hard time getting to. But it's all a thing. So we'll find out how all of those play out as we progress. But for now, we're going to take you through the dailies, starting with Nigerian Tribune this morning. They are following up or keeping a focus on the newly designed Naira notes. It says, as you see there, insufficient in banks. Whoa, already? Insufficient already? Look at the first divider here. As ATMs dispense old notes. Okay, so this observation also came through yesterday while we looked at it at some point. So who knows if with time, if that will happen. Many buildings burned as loaded fuel tanker, what? Look at that, skids off-road in Ibadan. Not a very good one there, really sad. So that's what you see right there. Criminals use petrol bombs to attack INEC offices. Ascribed to the IGP. Enough is enough, he says. That's the kind of tough talk we like to hear, but of course, you know that it shouldn't just be talk. Remember, we've said it time and again here. The NSA has spoken about some of these things, and not long after that, an INEC office was burnt after he read the Riot Act. So we'll be looking to see if this will meet up with our expectations. That is Tribune today.
Well, take a look at what New Telegraph has on its front page this morning. It's from the EFCC. It says, we've recovered over 30 billion naira from suspended accountants general. Secured 3,615 convictions. Reclaimed over $121 million to auction 150 forfeited houses. Says retrieved loot will fund critical infrastructure as Kogi alleges commission's fresh media trial bid to tarnish its image. Okay, so that is that is also on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Alleged organ harvest, anti-graft agency behind my travails. That's from Ekweremadu. So you find all of the details on pages 2, 6, and 7 of the paper this morning. The EFCC apparently given, will I say, its own details of how the year has been for it. So if you want to know how the EFCC has fared this year, this is what it is that we're saying on the front page. Over 30 billion naira from suspended accountant from one person.
It's mind-boggling.
30 billion.
There's no adjective to describe it. Boggling is not even enough.
In a country where we're borrowing money, in a country where we are not, you know, our revenue is in decline.
It's just ridiculous.
Then one person corners over 80 billion, out of which, well, I don't know if it's all of 80 billion. That's the accusation that was put forward. But if we're to go with the EFCC's words, 30 billion recovered from one person. Well, let us see how
this is cashless fraud.
Well, you know what they say about the biggest thieves? They want, he's not been convicted. I'm not saying he's been convicted, but hey, people who steal the most use pens to do it. They don't go carrying the cash around. To the extent that
the commission said they recovered 30 billion from him, it means he stole that part at least. For them to have recovered that part.
Maybe he was keeping it, you know. It might not have been stealing it. So we'll still wait until the courts say he's a convict, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, recovering this money, it's something. 30 billion.
Let us see what the courts say about that, you know, and how successful the EFCC will be in prosecuting someone whom they say they have evidence that they have been able to recover 30 billion naira from this individual. Will he still escape? Will he still slip through somehow? Will there be a lacuna somewhere?
Why won't people be angry?
You know, I sincerely hope not, Chamberlain. I hope that with this amount of evidence, you know, this will be sufficient to hold him by the wrist. Look at this. 2023, court dismisses ex-minister's suit seeking to stop Atiku Tinubu as appeal court nullifies judgment sacking Rivers APC candidate. DSS enjoins politicians to play by the rules, assures of adequate security, peace at Yuletide. Christians will no longer be apathetic to political issues. That's according to Northern Christian Association of Nigeria. Look at all of the other stories you find just right beneath the nameplate. A very sad story revealed yesterday. Demola Seriki, Nigeria's ambassador to Spain, dies age 63.
That was really sad.
Yeah, may he so rest in peace. Pages 4 and 28, you'll find details there. Biden to Buhari, your model of democracy in Africa. That story following what is happening in Washington, D.C. for you, the U.S.-Africa Summit. NDDC.
Who's the model?
Buhari is the model. That's what Biden said.
Oh,
okay. Senate committee shields Honor Chair from thorough scrutiny to discuss her nomination at executive session. Okay?
These politicians.
No comments.
Dear.
On top of the nameplate, World Bank loans to Nigeria in 30 months, now $9 billion. So you might want to look at that particular story as well. 6 end to multiple exchange rates subsidy. 5,000 firms, individuals, owe federal government 5.2 trillion naira. That's according to the minister. We'll leave it there for the New Telegraph this morning.
Flip to the Guardian newspaper, and the Guardian is also interested in money talks. And that's it on the front page. Banks ration new notes as circulation trickles. Look at the riders. Payout in old notes. Complain of limited supply. Mefiele writes reps, defers appearance. Lawmakers push summon to next Tuesday. Ibadan residents yet to see new Naira notes. Why so specific, Guardian? Banks in Kaduna, Kano limit payment to 2,000 Naira, 3,000 Naira. Well, what has your own experience been, and where are you located? You may do well to share with us as well. Let's know what you think of that. But then what you also have on the front page is not very, very palatable under the picture of under the major story. As year ends, sad tales from states over unpaid salaries and arrears. It's the big story on the front page of The Guardian. You'll find the details on pages 4 and 5. How encouraging could things be when teachers, especially, because the pictures there tell of teachers and students and pupils in classes. Not very palatable. Most certainly something that you should pick up and take a look at, because it is very, very disheartening. And that's so many other stories on the front page of the paper, but hey, but let me take this one. It'll take North 40 years to catch up with South. Who's saying that? The World Bank. What does that mean, really? Can we speed up the process? Page 18 of The Guardian gives you details.
Huge food for thought there for subnationals in Nigeria's north. It captures the state of infrastructure, pretty much, most of the facilities in Nigeria's north. Well, there's still time for some catching up. It all goes to decisiveness and, a resolution to do the best, to do right by the people. From there, let's flip to leadership. Leadership on Friday is interested in oil this morning, and this is how the big story is rendered. As Nigerians decide in 70 days, next president must tackle fuel subsidy exchange rate crisis. That's ascribed to the Kaduna State Governor, Governor Nasir El-Rufai, who was speaking at a World Bank event in Abuja just yesterday. And let's take a look at the riders. Be ready to sacrifice second term for tough decisions. I will reflect diversity in my key appointments. That's attributed to the presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar. I'm not championing sectional interests, and that's the LP candidate, Peter Obi. From there, let's look at some other stories, going beneath the picture now to see this one. EFCC responsible for my travails in London court. That's former Deputy Senate President Ikekwe Madu speaking from London there. I recall he's still in the thick of the organ harvesting trial in London, and he says the reason the court has refused to grant him bail is because the EFCC wrote a letter against him, something to do with his assets. Well, let's see how that goes. And this one also caught a bit of attention yesterday, both on mainstream media and online. Blasphemy, I will die a man of honor, Sheikh Kabara, who was convicted by a Sharia court. And before we exit leadership newspapers, take a look at this one. CSOs back Emefiele as court declines to stop withdrawal policy. Well, we'll be having quite some conversation this morning on that one, and I'm interested in knowing all of the angles to it. Let's end it now for leadership newspaper.
Take a look at Vanguard newspaper next. FG states to spend 19.16 trillion naira on wages, pensions, others in 2023. Earmark 11.4 trillion naira for capital projects. Southwest top zones with 3.07 trillion naira. North Central least with 1.068 trillion naira. Imo budget awaiting presentation to House of Assembly up till now. Lagos State budget more than that of Southeast, Northeast, Northwest, and North Central zones. Well, that's like put together. FG votes 6.31 trillion naira, or 30.8% of its total expenditure for debt service in 2023. Well, I tell you what, I mean, there needs to be a lot of focus on the budget of states in this country, such that they will scrutinize it, because they barely debate their budgets in state houses of assembly. So it's almost like they're all like rubber stamp assemblies in those states. They don't scrutinize as much as debate.
It's a good thing that there are a number of NGOs that are now focusing on doing that.
Way to go.
Organizations like Budget, which ensures that, which is always asking, because some states don't even want to show you what their budgets are.
No breakdown.
No breakdown.
It's almost like locked up in a safe. So there's a lot of scrutiny in that of the federal government. Why not that of those of the states?
Exactly.
We need to break it down. It's people's money. They didn't go become governors with their pocket money. So they need to keep explaining to the people, and people need to ask more questions. It doesn't matter what they feel or how they feel about all of those things. So that's what needs to happen with state budgets. So when they come thumping their chest, we need to ask them all of those questions. That's Vanguard this morning.
Take a look at what Daily Independent has on the front pages this morning. It's also about 2023 elections. It says we're monitoring politicians' spending pattern. That's from the EFCC.
Okay, whatever hell works or makes a ship sail.
Okay, and they say says petitions already before it against some candidates. Agency has recovered over 30 billion naira from suspended AGF. That's the Accountant General. Look at this. 2023, Biden cautions Buhari, INEC against partisanship. That is also there as well. EFCC behind my ordeal in the United Kingdom court. Ikekwe Madu cries out. And that is also there. And then you also have a number of stories at the court. Look at this picture. I mean, look at the picture. Worth 1,000 words.
Oh, dear. That's sad.
A very, very tragic incident that happened yesterday. There have to be questions as to how did this happen? That's a train, the newly open trains, Abuja-Kaduna train. I think our train was coming into Abuja yesterday, and somebody was trying to cross, a woman, we understand, was trying to cross about the same time. The train was coming on high speed, didn't get past it on time, and that was the result. The picture you see there was the result. She was crushed to death, and her car was also crushed to death. I mean, crushed like what you've seen there. And then the train too was stopped forcefully. So, you know, journey terminated for those who were traveling. The question is, how do we ensure that this doesn't happen again? That's the big question. Do we have stops for when trains are passing where cars would normally pass? Do we have that sign that, you know, the barrier that automatically falls down and tells cars to stop until trains have passed? Or do we leave car owners, you know, wondering, how do I put it now, seeing if they can quickly cross before the train? You know, this is a very tragic incident, something that needs to be looked into to ensure that it doesn't happen again. One life needlessly lost, and of course the damage to, you know, a family, to even those who were, you know, on the train as well. The train has just been newly repaired. They have to fix it again, perhaps. A really sad incident, Kimberly.
Well, really sad. That's why we always keep harping on the importance of driving to stay alive. It means every of your antenna senses needs to be up. So there you go. That ends a look at some of the dailies here this morning. We will be back in just a moment. And guess what? We're talking about this newly redesigned narrow notes. How, the limits, the laws, about you getting them, all of that and more in a moment. Stay with us.
It's the last plenary session of the week in the House of Representatives, and the latest policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria is utmost on the mind of the lawmakers.
Federal Government of Nigeria Power Company budget.
Soon as the presiding officer calls the chamber to order, a member raises a point of urgent national importance.
It bothers whoever is sitting in this place, because most of them are from rural areas. Everything is being done in naira and cash, and somebody will wake up, it's like he owns this country, and make a policy that will start tomorrow. No consultation. People are forgetting that 80 or 90% of the people are not in rural areas. So we must do something to save the situation.
Lawmakers from both sides of the divide express divergent views on the policy.
More than 70% of our communities in this country do not have banking system. Few states, Lagos, Rivers, Kano, Delta probably, might boast of about 70 to 75% coverage in banking system. Yet, the CBN under Almighty Emepele woke up and introduced this very heartless, as far as I'm concerned, decision.
If you want to stop banditry, make it impossible for them to have cash.
So you're speaking against the motion?
There shouldn't be cash available for them. That's one. Two, we passed the law on this floor. It's our law. The fact that CBN all this while had been sleeping and never went into their law, the law passed, and ensured that they follow it to the letter, didn't mean that it wasn't there. The law is there. They are only now waking up and now implementing what we sent out to them.
The action of the lawmakers is coming a day after some senators had raised concern over the policy. The Senate had proposed to hold a debate on the policy on Tuesday, December 13, 2022. Before putting the motion to question, the Speaker of the House proposed a joint session with the Senate on the issue.
I think you will allow me to speak to the Senate President and see whether, in compliance with the Act, we can have a joint session, and this is important enough.
While the lawmakers are planning to meet Mr. Emefiele on Thursday, December 15, 2022, they also raised questions on the source of funding for printing the new currencies.
So those two gentlemen are joining us to give us their perspective on all of what is going on. But starting off with Dr. Paul Adanaba, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. He joins us virtually. Now, for lawmakers to be divided on this subject matter, it's a bit confusing because many thought it would have been straightforward because they should know what the law says about this policy of the CBN in terms of the limits, how or what the CBN can or cannot do. So give us your immediate thoughts about this matter now. Are you as uncomfortable with this subject matter as some lawmakers are, or are they making a mountain out of a molehill?
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, Nigeria is a democracy with freedom of speech and association and all that. This is a money matter. And you know, when money is in issue, a lot of people will pick up interest and speak. The National Assembly is talking about the money and what the CBN wants to do with the either change of color or the redesign or whatever of the naira. If the CBN have not even started talking about that, has any member of the National Assembly spoken about the state of our currency? Has the CBN Act been amended in that regard since 2007? So they can be concerned, really. But the CBN has powers under Section 2 of the CBN Act. Those are part of the principal functions of the CBN. The Section 2 of that Act authorizes CBN to issue legal tender or legal currency in the country. So when you go from Section 18 of the CBN Act up to Section 19, you will now see that all that they need to do is to get the approval of the president, and then the CBN can, issue these tenders in the denomination, in the fraction, and the design. So these are what the president approves. So if you are listening to the CBN government,
yeah, but Dr. Nadaba, if I could just jump in there, Mr. Fadana he's written about these matters concerning how the CBN is not exactly correct on this matter. In fact, he refers to the Money Laundering Act of 2022, if we could pull that up, and he also refers to Section 2 of the same act, and 2.1 says, no person or body corporate shall, except in a transaction through a financial institution, make or accept cash payment of a sum of exceeding A, 5 million naira or its equivalent in the case of an individual, or B, 10 million naira or its equivalent in the case of a body corporate. So for CBN to say individuals cannot withdraw more than what, 100,000 naira, and corporate bodies 500,000 naira, he thinks based on this, it is flat out wrong.
Now, you are talking about withdrawal limits. That, if you look at the Money Laundering Act, is a specific legislation in that regard. It is a legislation aimed at checking misuse of the currency and money laundering. Now, what the CBN issued was not a law in terms of the withdrawal limits. This is like a transition policy which they issued. I am not in support of that withdrawal limits because, like you rightly pointed out, that is not provided for in the CBN Act, and actually it goes against the Money Laundering Act. To that extent, yes. But we are looking at the power of CBN to even first issue the currency, redesign the currency, and having said that, I don't know whether you were using the Nigerian currency. Anybody who used the Nigerian currency at the times that they changed currency in CBN, the hardship on Nigerians was just too much. It was just too much. There's a wide gap between policies, laws, and reality. You were saying, okay, how many of Nigerians live in the rural areas where there are no banks? The CBN appears to have believed that every Nigerian has a bank account, banks are everywhere, and they are functioning. And the timing is so short. Well, how many days do we have to 31st of January? So there will be stampede, even for Christmas celebrations, if care is not taken, people will not have money to spend because the banks will, as of today, are ATMs dispensing the new currency? No. How many ATMs are dispensing it? With the limits. People, how much is the transport fare? I live in Lagos. Between Lagos and about where I come from, where would you get the money to pay? But now, if it's 20,000, the transport fare is over 20,000 already.
Until after
so,
December.
I do not support the withdrawal limits. CBN can well redesign, yes, and spread the time. Take the British example. They didn't just suddenly jump on the British citizens within less than 50 days and say, no, you must change the currency, you must have withdrawal limits, all rolled into one. So I think that I agree with Falana on that point. The withdrawal limits, and I also agree with the National Assembly, things should be planned. We know the state of our infrastructure financial-wise, so we should plan out things and carry them out carefully. Of course, you knew that the Minister of Finance also tried to join.
If you can hear me, Prof. Good.
Yes.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you like that. But the withdrawal policy, which the CBN spelled out, is not supposed to kick in until well after the festivities. I think it's supposed to start on the 9th of January. Because a lot of people express this concern, but the 9th of January is now when it's supposed to kickstart this 20,000 naira limit, etc. Do you still, I mean, because by that time the festivities are over, whoever has traveled, perhaps they should be back in town, all of that. Do you think that still holds water? The concerns that, oh, people might not have sufficient money to travel, etc.
Well, but let me tell you, I started with the difference between the law policies and reality. Having made that point, having been made, why didn't they start this talking about the policy in January? Many Nigerians would have already started implementing it ahead of that night. That's the point I was making. Such that there will be a lot of problem and confusion. And let me ask you, have you looked at the issue of collection of PVC? How has it fared? Law must be practiced in a culture, in a society. How does our society look at it? Will our society wait until 9th? Will CBN also roll out, effectively carry it out on the 9th? Before, in the next few days, people have started already gone to that default situation. That's the point I'm making. It will lead to a lot of hardship. What are the backups? If a bank refuses to give you money, look at the foreign exchange part. You want to go and you want to get BT and all that, you want to travel. Does it work in ideally as it is being portrayed? Those are the points I'm making. People are agitated. And I'm saying maybe it is to check corruption, check money that are out of circulation, check counterfeiting, and all this.
All right, Dr. Anaba, just hang on a minute. We also have another guest in Lagos. Perhaps he will equally shed light on operationalizing some of these policies. Our colleagues in Lagos will do us the honors. Go ahead, guys.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, Mr. Agada Akpochi is here with us. He is a practitioner, scholar in diffusion of innovation and digital financial services. He is a certified payments professional, digital financial services expert, mentioned that. And he's also a lawyer. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Ayo. Thank you, Nigerians.
Are we making a mountain out of a molehill?
Yes, we are. And it's natural. It is natural because man by nature resists change. But the reality is that, as Charles Darwin told us, it is not the strongest of species that survives. Neither is it the most intelligent. It is that is adaptable to change. And we are dealing with change.
I don't see how easy it would be for anyone to change to being able to cash check up to 200,000 naira or 150,000 naira and now reduced to just 50,000 naira.
Okay, first and foremost, I think what Nigerians need to understand is first the state of the law. And I respectfully urge the two senior advocates who have commented on this matter, Dr. Ananaba and also Femi Falana, both senior advocates of Nigeria, to reconsider their position for the following reasons. Number one, the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act states expressly that banks shall be regulated exclusively by the Central Bank of Nigeria and no one else. Two, the Central Bank of Nigeria Act, which they also refer to, grants independence or autonomy to the central bank. Thirdly, the Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Act, which they quoted, should be understood as being different in its provisions from the regulatory framework that the central bank has released. The Money Laundering Act penalizes, criminalizes transactions above the limit that they have mentioned. The CBN policy does not criminalize withdrawal above the limit that the CBN has set. So why won't
this the limit?
What's the difference now?
So one is a criminal offense.
Okay.
So when they say
within which context, when it is used criminally?
So if you transact above the limit stipulated in the Money Laundering Act, it is a crime.
Which is 5 million naira.
Yes,
10
and it is
naira.
forbidden to transact in cash above that limit.
In cash?
Yes.
Okay.
The CBN has not attempted to prohibit or criminalize withdrawal above the limit that the CBN has set. The CBN has only said, if you want to transact above this limit, don't ask poor Nigerians to subsidize you.
Above which limit now? The 5 million or the 100,000?
The 100,000. So when they say that what the CBN has done is inconsistent with the provisions of the Money Laundering Act, that is not correct, with due respect. Furthermore, if you
Please
read...
clarify that.
Yeah, that needs to be clarified.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm staying on that. If you look at the provisions of the Money Laundering Act, it also provides that no institution should engage in activities above such limits as will be stipulated by relevant regulators. So while the policy of the CBN does not criminalize and does not prohibit withdrawal above the limit defined by CBN, that of the Money Laundering Act does. 2, the Money Laundering Act itself provides that limits can still be set outside what has been defined in the Act. So the CBN is simply saying, you can go and withdraw as much as you want, but when you do that, you should pay for it. And I've listened...
My apologies. And we need that to be clear.
Yes.
So the CBN is saying you cannot collect anything per week more than 100,000 naira or a maximum of 20,000 naira cash per day. Now,
no, the CBN has not said you can't. The CBN says...
The maximum, just a second, number 3, the maximum cash withdrawal per week via ATM shall be 100,000 naira, subject to a maximum of 20,000 naira cash withdrawal per day. That's the one that's revised December 6, 2022.
Ayo, if you look at that circular from the CBN, it provides for different channels of transaction. It's not ATM only. It provides for across the counter.
Yeah.
It provides for what can happen at what we have now called POS, which means agency banking outlets. And in all, what the CBN has said is if you want to withdraw across the counter in the bank, you are free to, but you pay for the service because there is a cost. And that cost today is being borne by Nigerians. I listened to you earlier before this program where we were talking about subsidy. There is subsidy not only in petroleum products, there is subsidy in cash handling and banking services in Nigeria. And the subsidy is being paid by the poor, for the few,
Please explain,
for the rich.
Explain what that means.
Okay, let's look at it. There's this outcry about people who are unbanked, about the majority in the rural area.
Yes.
That supports the CBN policy. It is actually not against it. Those who say so do not appreciate that the very essence of the CBN policy is not to prevent those people from being included. Additionally, if you are not banked, then you cannot go to the bank to make a withdrawal, and you will then not have to pay the service fee that the CBN has asked banks to charge.
But it prevents them to the extent that these unbanked, the CBN has not taken into consideration their literacy levels. You know, how many people can carry out, can execute a transaction with their, devices, mobile devices?
No,
They're
what
not
I'm saying
educated
to
to that
you,
level.
what I'm saying to you is that the CBN regulation applies only to the banked. It does not apply to the unbanked. Because
but the goal is to go cashless.
If you are not
to
banked,
encourage digital transactions.
If you are not banked, then you can't be paying the charges that the CBN has asked banks to charge. We need to understand that. Additionally, and this is very fundamental, the CBN has been very intentional, and we must commend them. Just as they are also criticized for certain activities, we must learn to commend where we should. The CBN has not introduced additional charges for deposit. So what the CBN has done is to say, there are people who are excluded. There's high rate of financial exclusion in Nigeria. Let's encourage them to bring their money in. When they bring their money in, don't impose additional charges. When the money is within the system, to ensure that the money is kept within the system for the benefit of the economy, for the benefit of Nigerians, particularly the poor masses, you should transact electronically. However, if there is a reason why you will transact with cash, with large cash, please pay for it. Don't ask the central bank, the banking system and the poor Nigerian populace to subsidize it. And when you look at the number, this is a country that has a salary policy, minimum pay is 30,000 naira. And we are talking of withdrawal of 100,000 naira in a week. That is 400,000 naira in a month. How many Nigerians have 400,000 naira in their bank account that they will withdraw 100,000 naira every month? So my appeal really is that the Nigerian elites should please do a reflection and ask the question, are we fighting for the public or we are fighting for the few?
Mr. Poji, you have not addressed the difficulties that Mr. Nanaba talked about, which this would, impose on the unbanked and the uneducated to the extent that, they can participate effectively in the cashless economy, which is the goal of the CBN. How many people can execute transactions with their mobile devices? Not many of them are educated to that extent. And then when you go into the hinterland, how much do people have anyway for them now to start patronizing the services of POS, which is expensive? On each 10,000 naira, you're paying 200 naira. So these are some of the things, these are some of the difficulties that will be imposed on the unbanked. No,
there's no difficulty imposed on the unbanked.
I just outlined them.
No, and you need to listen to my perspective on this. The policy applies to only the banked, not the unbanked. As you said, if someone is not banked, how will the person go to a bank? How will the person be charged 5% for cash withdrawal? If the person is poor, then the person does not have enough money to withdraw 100,000 naira a week, which is 400,000 naira a month. So we must be careful not to defend the rich under the disguise that we are defending the poor.
Doesn't this even further tell the unbanked to remain unbanked?
No. On the contrary, it tells the unbanked to come in, because when you come in, you are not charged for coming in. You are not charged for bringing your money. And then when you want to transact for the unbanked, they are the poor.
Are you taking into cognizance?
They don't have 400,000 naira a month to spend.
Let me stretch this a little further. Are you taking into cognizance the absence of ATMs and POSs in these hard-to-reach areas as well, when we're talking about the unbanked?
You don't need ATM. You don't need bank branches. And that is why I talked earlier about change. It's a change initiative. And we need to begin to look at it with a different mindset. Otherwise, we will not get the result we want. And when you want to achieve development as a nation, it cannot be accidental. It has to be intentional. You talked about ATM, you talked about POS. If you go to our rural communities, and if you look at the statistics from the Nigeria Communication Commission, you have a high teledensity rate of over 100% in Nigeria. There are many more people carrying a telephone handset than those carrying a payment card, which is called, for whatever reason, ATM card in Nigeria. So you don't really need the ATM.
A sparse Senate chamber on Wednesday morning. Plenary session is supposed to be underway at this time. However, very few lawmakers are in the chamber on a day slated for a crucial debate of the cash withdrawal policy by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The Deputy Senate President eventually arrives way behind schedule to preside over plenary. Moving along, the chairman of the Committee on Banking presents the highly anticipated reports of his committee's engagement with the Central Bank of Nigeria on the cash withdrawal policy of the Apex Bank, which is expected to come into effect on January 9, 2023. He gives justifications for the reinstatement of a full cashless policy and nationwide implementation.
The Central Bank latest action on Naira redesign and nationwide implementation of cashless policy are intended to further sustain this achievement in the quest to foster a safe, credible and efficient payment system that is the pride of all Nigerians and the envy of the world. It is neither targeted at any segment of the society nor intended to disenfranchise hardworking Nigerian citizens and businesses as insulated as empires.
The debate begins. Some lawmakers are bothered about the withdrawal threshold, which they term unrealistic, while some others are concerned about the impact of the policy on Nigerians in the rural communities.
Every day, as I sit here in this chamber, I have every day not less than 100 people, laborers, working on my farm, and they have to be paid by 5 o'clock. Cash, of course, they don't possess POS, and they don't have bank accounts. The last UBA branch in my constituency was closed 6 years ago.
Central banks should reconsider their decision. They should do 500,000 per day for individual, and they will do 3 million per day for corporate.
There are 1.4 million POS operators in Nigeria and counting. They are making a living out of providing cash, out of filling in the gap that banks have failed to do in the last 15 years, because CBN has failed to meet its financial inclusion target. Now, in one fell swoop, we're taking them out of business.
But a few legislators maintain that the policy will benefit the country.
3.2 or 3.3 trillion naira money in circulation, and it's only 1.something trillion naira in the banking system. The danger is detrimental to the economy and the security of this country.
The CBN Act did not forbid the POS that POS will not operate. But when we are now giving the impression that the policy is killing the POS, which means that we are saying opposite of what the CBN Act is saying.
At the conclusion of the debate, the Senate recommends that the CBN considerably adjust the withdrawal limits in response to public outcry on the policy. The upper chamber also commits to supporting the Apex Bank in terms of transformational payments and financial industry initiatives. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, Prof, you've been listening most certainly, and those issues, I'm wondering how you would want to react to them. The reference to BOFIA, the BOFIA Act, the reference to the CBN Act, the reference to the Money Laundering Act that Mr. Akpoji has mentioned here. How do you respond to some of these things? What's your take on his arguments?
Well, I thank him for his perspective and analysis, but Nigerians know that we are not talking about scholarly arguments. We're not talking about perspectives alone. We're talking about realities. The intention of CBN obviously is good. The issue here is not about whether it's good or not. The issue is not only about whether CBN has powers to do what they are trying to do. The intention is that law must not ignore the society. A law that ignores society will have no value. It will be observed more in breach. That's the point being made.
But what are your concerns, Prof? Because I mean, what he's saying here, I mean, clearly, kind of one way or the other, agrees with some of the things you're saying. The argument is not that money cannot be spent at all, but that cash withdrawal, cash in the circulation within society should be limited. That's been the argument of the CBN for very many years, and I think that's the same thing that he's saying. Essentially saying people should go more cashless than using cash for transactions.
Let me pose a question. Even me or you speaking, how effective is the cashless operation of the CBN? How effective has it been? How many times have you tried to transfer money and there's no network? Or you transfer money, it takes more than a day? What if you're on the way, on the highway, for example, you want to buy something on the road and you have to pay by, you transfer, and you go to CBN, they tell you there's no network. You want to buy fuel, for example, you're traveling. You will wait until network comes. These are the issues. That's why I was saying that if theoretically speaking, any person can come up with theories that look sweet, that look nice. We're talking about a reality in the economy where you are going to practice that theory.
And that's a valid point, Prof. Maybe Mr. Pochi, it's definitely a concern. Digital financial services is the way to go, but the technology to drive it, it's the experience of many Nigerians.
Okay, thank you, Ayo. I would like to say that when you talk of the experience is good, but it's bad because when you are not served, you are unhappy. And
Certainly.
That is what you remember. I can tell you that in terms of approval rate, we have over 98% approval rate for instant payment in Nigeria. If you look at
whose data is this?
Nigeria Interbank Settlement Systems, in November alone, NIBS recorded 38.9 trillion naira worth of transactions on instant payment.
Successful transactions.
Yes,
How about
and that led to
How about
354 trillion naira worth of transactions in the first 11 months of the year.
I wonder if that's
just a second. How about failed transactions?
So yes, there are failed transactions.
What's the worth of that one?
And the failed transaction, as I said to you, is less than 2%. So if something is successful 98 out of 100 times, you would not say because there is failure representing only 2%, that it is not the way to go. And I'd like to talk about the practical realities that Professor Ananaba spoke to. When you say you want to buy something on the road, worth how much? You are allowed to have cash, and the cash you will carry should be enough for what you want to buy on the road. But even on the road, if you are driving, and you need to fill your tank, there's no reason why you cannot make payment electronically. And the mistake is that we focus on what we know. Because of that, we are looking at those who are using mobile app, and you need data service. What of USSD, which can serve everyone, not the likes of those of us who are speaking on television now. So you can use the USSD channel and you will transact, but the more important thing is that the things you will do on the road, you can do with the cash that CBN allows you to withdraw. If you have to do much more than that, pay for it.
Well, Mr. Pochi, it's the reliability of even the USSD code, because all of these things are related. Just before Chamberlain comes in, I'd like Professor Onanaba to talk about the security component of it, which many Nigerians have lauded as it will discourage banditry and kidnapping and the payment of ransom. When you consider that, don't you think that the benefits outweigh the odds that we've been looking at in the last half hour?
Yeah, thank you. Let me start with what my brother was saying. You use USSD. It's so simple to say so. In which part of the country will you use the USSD? Nigerian banking system has given 98% success. From which reliable pool? From which reliable data? From my own transactions, I don't agree with that data. That's the point I'm making. And I know many people don't. I know when I will stay for even a whole day, I can't even make transactions. The ones that never went through, we're not talking about failed transactions. When you are told there's no network. You drive even in the city of Lagos, you drive into a filling station, you want to buy, but they say, our POS is not working. How many of them use even the POS now? Now you say you have cash. How much cash will you have? Is it? I'm just using petrol alone. What if you have your tires bust or something? I'm just using those ones. Go beyond that, inside the village. So if you get into the village market, you will tell the old woman, you are making transactions. What about false transactions that people show you it is successful? At the end of the day, it's not successful. So I'm not looking at the negatives alone, there are positive sides of electronic transactions, and Nigerians are welcoming it, and it is gradually getting into the system and getting operational. And I'm saying that we should make haste slowly. We should take it in a manner that will be much more beneficial. How much really? Is it this limit that the CBN has announced? Were you talking about people that have families, that have children, that have no ATM cards, that have no banking facilities? So let's not just argue for the purpose of argument. Let us make argument to be beneficial. CBN has a good intention, fine. But how do we proceed? Yes.
All right, so Mr. Naba, let me take it back to Mr. Akpochi to get some response from him on this one. Incidentally, I mean, even in countries that their technology and system is a lot stronger, they still tell you cash is king. They have way stronger cashless policy. They still insist cash is king. So, Mr. Akpochi, it comes across from what Mr. Nadaba is saying that you seem to be ignoring some of these concerns because, according to you, if they're less than 2%, well, it's still a success rate. But when you say that one should be careful, or people should be careful not to defend the rich, you also make it sound as if people want to withdraw the monies they made legitimately, there's a crime in it. And don't forget the intention that the CBN said, and what the CBN governor has also said previously was they'll make it difficult for persons who are trying to fill a certain form or to take a certain amount of money. You have to. So intentions also matter when they look at all of these things. Besides, the lawmakers are not saying forget about this policy completely from what we've seen and read. They're saying adjust it to accommodate some of these concerns that people have. What is wrong with that?
Thank you, Chamberlain. I would like to use the example that Professor Naba has given. He talked about the rural woman in the marketplace. The rural woman in the marketplace does not sell any item that requires you paying 100,000 naira. The rural woman does not generate total sales of 100,000 naira in a week. So the point is that in reality, the policy does not adversely affect them. The policy affects those of us who are having a conversation now. We are the ones that have 400,000 naira or more in our bank account and want to make withdrawal, and we are concerned that we are allowed to make the withdrawal, but the poor will no longer subsidize us.
Where did you get this? Where did you get this data of yours from, that the rural people in the rural areas don't make such transactions? How did you come about that?
Well, we have sufficient data on the socioeconomic status of Nigerians. We know that we talk about poverty rate in Nigeria. We have sufficient data on all that. The World Bank, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, we have all seen those data. So I do not think that we should deny those data because we make an argument that support the rich and not the majority. If you look at Ayo or a Chamberlain, you may say, yes, I would like to spend more than 100,000 naira in a week in cash. Then please go ahead, but pay for it. Nobody is criminalizing it. But let us not say that the rural woman wants to spend 100,000 naira or more in a week. No, the rural woman does not need to spend that much because the rural woman does not have it. Except if we now want to ignore all the statistics that are out there about poverty rate in Nigeria. If you go to the banking system in Nigeria and you take statistics, over 90% of bank account holders do not have savings of up to 400,000 naira in their account. So if the CBN allows people...
Mr. Akpochi,
yes.
You know, some of the issues you've raised, I'm not exactly sure if that's the case, because I know several people in the rural areas who do transactions in a day, a week, for instance, way more than 100,000 naira in a week, way more. And besides, when you then say that this is for the rich, that cannot be true, because don't also forget that even if you're transferring or doing a transaction of 20,000 naira online or cashless, whichever way, you still pay to the banks. They charge you for all of those processes. So it is those who are even performing these functions, maybe the banks, the cashless operators, they are making a kill out of all of these other transactions. Maybe those are the people who will love this policy when you keep talking about arguing for the rich. So to that extent, that's not exactly correct from your perspective.
Okay, thank you, Chamberlain. If you go to the bank and you are withdrawing money, it means you are no longer transacting electronically. And you will not be charged if you are withdrawing 20,000 naira. You will not be charged if you are withdrawing 99,000 naira. Even if you want to withdraw above 100,000 naira, you are still allowed to withdraw, but please pay for it, because cash constitutes a huge component of the cost of banking service.
Sorry to jump in. I need to just let us listen to this perspective from the CBN governor. This was during the launch of this new naira, so that we'll see whether we can understand the intention or the intendment of the policymakers. Listen.
Following the redesign and issuance of this note, we would go forward to insisting that cashless will be nationwide. We will restrict the volume of cash that people will withdraw over the counter. If you need to draw large volumes of cash, you will fill uncountable forms. We will take your data, whether it's your BVN, your NIN, so that security agencies like EFCC or enforcement agencies like EFCC and ICPC can follow you and be sure that you are taking that money for good purpose.
So what do we make of that for intention? Add to that, because this morning, when we also see that the EFCC saying that they've recovered 30 billion naira from someone who is facing charges or being tried for having stolen probably in the realm of 80 billion naira. Cashless, so to speak. So what do you make of all of that?
Okay, thank you. I think you have spoken very well in support of the CBN policy. I say so because if the intention is to limit money laundering, if the intention is to prevent crime, then all of us should support it. If anyone engages in crime, then we have no reason to defend them. We have no reason to create a safe haven for them. If you want to transact, go and declare the reasons why you want to transact. That is what the CBN governor has said. And I'm not sure any Nigerian in good conscience will speak up against that. So those of us who want to transact legitimately have nothing to fear. We should go ahead and transact. And it is not a crime to transact. You pay for it and you should be able to declare it. That is what the CBN governor has said. Now, you talked about recovery of public funds from someone who is suspected to have stolen money. If that is an outcome of a policy such as that which the CBN has announced, then it is good. But I would like us to make a distinction between the redesign of the Naira notes and cash withdrawal limit. They are two separate things. Cash withdrawal limit can apply whether or not the Naira is redesigned. So they are two separate things. There are several issues around withdrawal limit as opposed to redesign of the Naira. And I would like us to focus on withdrawal limit. And the limit to withdrawal is
No, I mean, even though you say, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, just quickly, I wanted to ask you, if these limits have been, taken into cognizance inflation and what the money can actually buy. Do you think that in your own estimation, the limits imposed by the CBN in terms of cash withdrawal limits have taken into cognizance inflation that we've witnessed in recent times and the kinds of transactions that people have had to do perhaps with cash, even within the cities?
Yes, I think it has taken that into consideration. And I say so because if you have 100,000 naira a week and 400,000 naira a month, no matter the high rate of inflation, it is enough for you to transact in cash. That does not mean that you have no other means of payment. You can issue checks, you can transact through electronic means, you can also give a written instruction to your bank to transfer money. So what we are talking about is essentially retail payments, and we need to focus on that. If you want to do retail payment, then it is not expected that will be transactions in high value. But if you want to buy an item of high value, then by all means, use other means of payment than cash. But if cash is so important to you, please pay for it. Don't ask the majority of Nigerians to subsidize you. And if there should be subsidy, the subsidy should go to the poor and not the rich. And I'll continue to reiterate that only few Nigerians have up to 400,000 naira to spend on monthly basis, which translates to 100,000 naira weekly. So we must look at the policy from the Central Bank of Nigeria against the background of the data we have on socioeconomic conditions of Nigerians. Except if someone is telling me that majority of Nigerians have over 400,000 naira to spend in a month.
Who are those who pay the bulk of the taxes now, from the data you have, when you keep saying, well, the rich, the rich? Isn't it for some of those who have those funds that pay a lot more of the taxes? But as we wind down on this one, let me get Dr. Nanaba to respond or give his concluding thoughts as we wrap up. Dr. Nanaba, let's say your final thoughts on this matter.
Well, my final thought is that we all mean well for the country, and we cannot run this country based on opinion poll and data has been read out today in this program. Many of those data that is being we are talking about are not verified and are not verified. They are not realistic. I agree that the central bank has a duty to reduce cash in the system. In the first place, where was the central bank when the cash over about 3 trillion came out of circulation? Came into circulation outside the banking system. Where were they? If they want to mop up and reduce cash. My brother is saying, oh, the change, the diverse redesign of the naira and the cashless withdrawal. They are all happening within the same period. That's the premise we started from. The poor that we are saying today that are the beneficiaries of cash withdrawal limits, and the rich should pay. Where has the poor benefited from it? Right from my primary school days, we were told that policies of government is for a better future for me, for the poor, for younger ones who are coming up. Where is health for all 1990? Where is health for all 2000? Where is health for all 2010? Where is health for all 2020? Welfare for all everything. So let us leave television theoretical arguments and come to reality. We want to reduce cash in circulation. We should have taken the issue of resign of the naira and finish with it. First, cash withdrawal limits, and phase it. It will go in phases until we won't get to maybe this level where it's been talked about. Nobody is saying that the intention is not good, but the implementation has to be reviewed. You can look at the National Assembly saying they were not even taken into consideration, carried along in this process. They are the representative of the people too. Nobody is saying that CBN should not carry out this assignment, but they should carry it with a human face. When the implementation of these things begin, many of us will be affected, either directly or by our relations. How can somebody say that no Nigerian will, no Nigerians should 400,000 is enough to spend in a month. When a carpenter, a mason, a bricklayer, a mechanic works for you,
we need to wrap up at this point. Thank you very much indeed for your perspective today. Dr. Paul Wadanaba is the senior advocate of Nigeria. Well, let me get it back to Lagos where you can respond to some of those. Don't forget the banks, well, they have consistently declared humongous profit during COVID, during recession, when companies lay off. They always declare huge profit almost any time. So why won't this policy pay them to say we should pay for it?
Okay, thank you. I would like to support Professor Anandaba by saying that the policies and decisions made should be data-driven and should relate to reality. And speaking about data, I would like to refer to the World Bank report on digital financial services for 2020, which indicates that 850 million mobile accounts were opened across 90 countries, and Africa is leading with 21% of adult population using mobile money or digital financial service. But Nigeria, which is the largest economy in Africa and the largest population, is trailing behind at a poor rate of 3%. So the data are out there, and this is data from the World Bank. Now, if you build on that data, what we should ask is that if you want to encourage certain outcome or behavior, what should you do? You need to use policy and regulatory frameworks to inform the behavior of people.
The challenge.
And that is what we need to encourage in Nigeria. So I will ask Professor Anandaba, all of us who are participating in this conversation, and Nigerians, the elites, to please support this policy for the good of Nigeria and the majority of Nigerians.
Perhaps then you would also agree that the CBN and those of you in the digital financial services sector should deepen the financial services framework so that people have ease, because go on Twitter now, people are up in arms against this policy because of their experience, that which you spoke to about the other time. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We have to go now. Agada Apoji is a digital financial services expert as well as a lawyer. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Nigerians.
The 62nd Ministerial Weekly Briefing is anchored by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. The chairman of the commission had fresh revelations on the monies recovered from the suspended Accountant General of the Federation, Mr. Ahmed Idris.
One of the last major investigations that we did was we arrested the Accountant General of the Federation. The Accountant General of the Federation was arrested. Out of that fraudulent activities, the EFCC have recovered over 30 billion now, and we're already prosecuting them. In the last couple of years, under this administration, is there anybody that has not been investigated? Everybody has been investigated, including the EFCC.
There were more recoveries, especially from crude oil royalties.
$54 million for NUPRC, in terms of royalty that one of the oil companies have not paid. But our investigation led to that recovery. For the recoveries that we are making for NDDC, for instance, between now and probably, next week, we are going to transfer to them about 30 billion naira and about 30 million USD. These are recoveries that we have made from oil companies that have refused to pay the 3% statutory, payment to, NDDC. And we have also recovered billions of naira in terms of, fraudulent contractual engagement that NDDC have done over the years. And I want to state here that all relevant agencies must open what is called the confiscated properties recovery account. And we paid into that account 120 billion naira and 29 million US, about 6.6 million euros, as well as about 1.1 million pounds into that. And the president have sanctioned that all those monies should be utilized for what? For the provision of critical infrastructure in this country.
Just like the recent auction of forfeited vehicles, which are considered proceeds of crime, the Commission plans to extend the auction to forfeited real estate.
Very soon, before the end of the year, we are going to publish auctioning of real estate, across 15 locations And from the list that was given to me now, which is still being, worked on, we are going to dispose over 160 flats, apartments, across these 15 locations in our country.
He affirms that high-profile politicians are currently on their watch list. From 195 convictions in 2016, the EFCC boss asserts that 3,615 convictions have been recorded in 2022, many of which are cyber-related crimes. The EFCC boss now is determined more than ever to flush out, erring politicians or officers in its current drive to eradicate corruption in the country. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Well, it is an endless conversation, but let's take it one notch further today with Evie Richards, who is Executive Director, Corruption Observatory. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, I am.
On the one hand, is this assessment of the anti-corruption drive, which of course you just heard the EFCC chairman talk about, and that's an issue on its own. Another one on its own, which is supposed to energize the anti-corruption drive, is the whistleblower policy, which the Minister of Finance says has failed or lost steam. I don't even know which of the words he used. Which one would you go for? So what's your take, first of all, on our fight against corruption so far?
Ayo, is painful. It's painful, very painful. The first question you should ask is, what kind of system should permit this type of enormous leakage? Listening to the chairman of the EFCC talking about trillions, billions, and all of that. I also listened to the Minister of Finance when she lamented concerning the failure of the whistleblower system. It shows that the national integrity system is below the optimum level, and a lot has to be done on this. Mr. Bauer may think that he is shoring up the performance of this administration, but he had just, by the speech he made, indicted the anti-corruption campaign of this present administration. Because if the campaign...
Indicted?
Yes.
Not endorse or commend?
No, it's an indictment. The fact that corruption is endemic, that lots of recoveries are being made, lots of convictions are being made, shows that the system is extremely dirty. We're talking about anti-corruption, and I keep hammering on this, not pro-corruption. Listen, about 2 weeks ago, we were with the chairman of EFCC, our committee on national mirror body that mirrors ISO programs. We presented to him 3 standards, I think: the standard of anti-bribery, the standard of compliance, and that of risk. There were 3 standards. When he took a look at them, he said that yes, that's the way to go. He also did mention that he will make efforts to meet with the DG of the Standard Organization of Nigeria. And that brings me to this point of the lack of agency synergy in the country. We have almost everything. It's just that we do not do the right. See, the entire structure is working on its head.
Now, there's something you said the other time, and I'd like you to expatiate it too, so that people will understand. You talked about the national integrity system.
Yeah.
That sounds like you're talking about the instruments of government for fighting corruption. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and you see,
if you can just delineate those instruments, they explain to Nigerians what you mean by the integrity system and how it has become faulty over the years, such that these issues that are being raised, are...
Every public sector agency has three major deliverables. One is the rule of law, good quality of life, and the third one now that I don't have it offhand. Now, and you know that is supported by structures like the legislature, structures like the executive, the judiciary. Each time one of these structures becomes weak, you find out that you'll be having less and less rule of law, and quality of life begin to nosedive. That's the measure of the integrity system of any country. But there are sub-levels. We're talking about an accountant general of the country filtering away sums up to 30 billion naira. The first question you ask is, through what system? What system is permitting that kind of... It shows that the system is extremely weak. Now, what is being done all over the world is to ensure that lesser and lesser cases like this fall on the lap of the anti-graft agencies. So now you have several levels of checks and balances that are proactive. Now,
my apologies, sir. I'm a little bit lost. And it's not lost because, just as you said, we have almost everything that we need. One of those instruments that a good number of people assume that, look, it should be a no-brainer, is the Auditor General's report. Every year we receive that report. An analysis by SERAP recently of the 2017 Auditor General's report talks about something in the region of 2.7 or so trillion naira unaccounted for in 1 year. And one is wondering if the Auditor General, and most of the time what we have seen from what reports made available is that there isn't so much action on this Auditor General's report in particular for about a year or two. And of course, before even all of that litigation or conversation or whatever would happen, a year or 2 years have passed. So one wonders, if we have everything and they are functional, because the Auditor General's office is obviously working to release that report, what then is the problem?
That's exactly what I'm laboring to explain. The Auditor General's office is a reactive institution. It gives you report of damages already done. We're talking about standards, international standards that strengthen systems and makes it very impossible for corruption to occur. For instance, even a management system like the quality management system, okay, everything you do will be through process, and you are thinking based on the risk that you will meet, so that nothing takes you by accident. All right? And the system becomes so strong that for you to steal 1 million naira, the system will throw it up. People would know. There is this one called the anti-bribery management system standard that is already with the EFCC. We're giving a copy to the EFCC. The problem is the language from the top, the tone from the top. The president, I'm sorry, with all due respect, I do not think he's really serious about fighting corruption. Why am I saying this? And they say he's a champion of, African champion of anti. I don't know what measures, any institute, considered or not, was used to, make that appointment or an award or something. Look at your country, Ayo. There is no whistleblower protection law. The first thing you do if you want to fight corruption is to protect those who want to speak out, talk, let us know what's going on, not based on what has happened, based on suspicion alone.
So you think that's why the policy failed the perks or the
I listened carefully to the finance minister when she said that people are afraid See, let me tell you.
And that's where I'm interested, Mr. Richard. If the Minister of Finance, government is coming out to say that the whistleblower protection failed, but isn't the government belly aching? Because if we went by the account of those who had come out in the past, to blow a whistle on stash of funds in a location, a lot of them were not compensated in the past. A lot of them, went undercover due to threats. So doesn't this speak to the failure of government to implement the policy to the letter?
It's not about implement. The policy itself was not right. See, the world best practice, and I was one of the few Africans who sat on the ISO committee that developed this Whistleblower Protection Act, already resident in Nigeria with the SON. Okay. Now, it's based on 3 principles. The first of it is protection. The other one is confidentiality, and then trust. The issue of incentivizing whistleblowing is optional. So why should the giant of Africa promulgate a policy based on incentives? The real thing is not being done. And now...
Are you saying it shouldn't have been incentivized?
That is optional, very optional. What the average whistleblower wants is to be protected, is to trust the institution he's blowing the whistle to, and to ensure that there are no reprimands, there are no witch hunts, and all of that. And
that's exactly the point. The whistleblower goes against strong politicians, so definitely they'll be witch hunted, and they will require some form of reward, for the huge opposition that they're coming up against.
Reward is not reward. In a proper setting, if you blew the whistle in China's organization right now, the management will be so careful as to what would do with you after you blew the whistle, because the onus of how do you put that in law now? That whatever comes back to you is not as a result of the whistle that you blew. The protection is not just only around you, on you, but around everyone that is around you.
So essentially you're saying that the policy was faulty ab initio.
It wasn't, it was a laughable policy.
Okay, so what should have happened and what should happen now around that particular policy?
You see, since the days of President Obasanjo, and I'm really, let me even give credit to the executive this time, and a show of shame to the legislature. They exist to make laws for good governance, all right, for the people. The legislature in the days of Obasanjo, this particular bill went up onto second reading. It went under the carpet. Goodluck Jonathan's time was the same thing. As we speak...
That you're talking about the whistleblower law?
Yes. We don't have one. They don't have the... Maybe they are scared that they will be the first culprits if it so happens. Because that's the first thing that they ought to do. And they are not doing it. It's not in the place of the executive to begin to talk about protecting whistleblowers. Because the first primary act of the legislature is to hold the executive to account.
So when you talk about protection for whistleblowers, I want you to break it down now. What are you recommending, should in case this policy will be reconsidered in the future, for expansion, for it to be more comprehensive?
First and foremost, let me just say that there's no point reinventing the wheel. The policy is with us. The world best practice is resident at the SON. They can just pick a copy there, change some things and make it our own law here in Nigeria, domesticate it. Okay. Now,
is this something with the legislature already?
This is the issue with, is it interagency rivalry or lack of synergy or whatever you want to call it? Everything we have in this country, but nothing is being done the way it should be done. Okay, so the oversight, whatever that is in the legislature, can easily go to the SON. SON should even reach out, like Mr. Bauer promised to reach out to the DG of the SON. We have one president, we have one country, we have one system. So why do we...
Now that you mentioned Mr. Bauer, he's high on the achievements of the EFCC as far as recovery of assets is concerned, and that's which he mentioned specifically about the former Accountant General of the Federation. Do you think that that has been done in a hurry, considering the fact that the case is still on trial, and isn't this tantamount to some form of media trial?
Well, there's no harm in Mr. Bauer reeling out to us the good work that he has done, the performance, the achievements within the period of time, all of that. But what I find curious there is the fact that he has failed to recognize that he was indicting the anti-corruption campaign of this administration. He was merely saying the work that we're doing, the more we do it, the more corruption thrives. That was what he was saying. And I can really challenge you. If you like, go across the country, build prison yards all over. It doesn't sort out. So reactive institutions, yes, we need them in the polity. But what we need most are proactive institutions.
Such as?
The SON, for instance, okay? The BPP, for instance, Bureau of Public Procurement, the PCC, Public Complaints Commission, NAITI, CCPC. These are the agencies that should be strengthened, seriously strengthened, properly funded. Once you do this, Mr. Bauer, we have less work to do.
These are the structures that you refer to as the integrity system of the...
All those are subsets of the integrity system. So some are resident, like the PCC is resident in the legislature, where everybody can go. It's called the Public Complaints Commission. Whatever happens, you can go there and speak. It's an agency of the legislature. The CCPC is an agency of the executive. But in the wisdom of governance, good governance, those subsets are there to put in place multiple levels of checks and balances so that very few cases now fall to the reactive agencies for them to handle. As it were today, the ICPC, the EFCC, they are overwhelmed.
Now you talked about how good the function of proactive and reactive, institutions. You said that the Auditor General's office is a reactive institution.
It is.
But if even in its reaction or reactionary activities, would you say it has been strong enough? There are those who are pointing to the absence of the audit law, of an audit law, an audit commission, to be able to, for the office of the Auditor General to function with more teeth.
Well, you know the kind of country that I really don't want to go to that side of the conversation, but if we have ideal Nigerians, people with the love of country at heart, these things would work.
Okay.
I'm curious also about whether the FCC should go after the proactive institutions as well, because that's where the corruption is perpetrated, or seemingly perpetrated.
No,
that's where the discoveries are done.
To be schooled. All of them need to be schooled first and foremost, because imagine the EFCC right now cannot be said to be void of corruption.
The EFCC itself.
Yes, and so is the ICPC. All right, so first and foremost, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands.
This conversation is definitely endless, because there is financial crime on one hand, and then there is corruption. And corruption is not only financial.
No.
It's a conversation that will not end, because it is something that we're always dealing with. But now we have to thank you very much for being here this morning, making the sacrifice to come to the studio. Evie Richard is Executive Director, Corruption Observatory. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Morning. Well, your own contribution to the program is also part of our content today. This one is from HKZ. It says the amount of monies recovered by the EFCC is mind-boggling. That's Chamberlain's word this morning. My question is, why have we not been able to tighten our financial systems? How much more have gone unrecovered? We should not be celebrating these recoveries. We should be worried, really worried. I am.
How much more have gone unrecovered? Let's leave that to the imagination. This one is from Gina Lubem, and he or she says, CBN may have good intentions, but there is an obvious poor stakeholder engagement in all of this. If the Minister of Finance and National Assembly could disown this policy, it means the CBN got it wrong.
Well, I've got a similarly curious Victor who says, people are complaining about daily withdrawal limits when minimum wage is 30,000 naira. How many sincere civil servants can withdraw more than 20,000 naira every day. How much is the salary?
Big question.
Just 20,000 naira.
Big question. Victor Owa says the Apex Bank has the powers to make this cashless drive work. Why should they wait for 48 hours of a failed transaction before they start sanctions on banks? Let them ask banks to make all transactions go through at once. It is possible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But there's an email from Mohammed Daliyu who says, what about the people that deal in, say, livestock? Cows could be, to be specific. One cow is about, wait for that, 600,000 naira.
This guy is preparing for Christmas.
And I'm selling 10 to buy it to a buyer, transporting it to Lagos. The buyer needs to sorry, he said the buyer needs to fill the trailer with about 25 to 30 before leaving. How does this system work? The full animal moving outside mainstream will be paid. How exactly? Large-scale grain dealers and other crop production as well? He's really concerned.
Oh, well, and validly too, but I think the idea is for you to do it, cashlessly. So open bank accounts and see how you can transfer that amount, over apps, etc. Look at this one from Joseph Oludare Olowa says, the truth of the matter is that we need to courageously take the bitter pills now and be free from future breakdown. No economy that wants to be a continental giant can afford what is going on in Nigeria's financial sector. Excesses must be tamed, regulations must be in place, and the law must apply to all citizens. I want to underline that. All citizens without double standards. It's the way to go.
Realistically, that will be the day. Well, thank you all for watching. We appreciate your messages as well. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so have a very, very lovely weekend.
Well, Mr. Peter Awodi, we also saw your mail as well, and many more. Thank you so much for writing in, and have a great weekend. And Maokwe Yusuf.
And what a wonderful week it's been. Thank you for sharing your mornings with us. Join us again next week. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Over
the weekend, I know you go and besiege your ATMs for the new notes or your banks. Good luck. I'm Aya Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.